Mike Flynt, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Dick. I appreciate very much you having me here. I'm going to turn this phone off because I know it'll be ringing.
That's podcasting 101 right there, is always
Yeah,
turning off the
yeah.
phone. Mike, if someone's come across this video and they don't know who you are or anything about your background, why do you think they should stick around and listen to what you have to say?
Well, I think that everyone that tunes in is listening. They're looking for something, and I think that what I have to offer is something that's very basic, very simple, and it's uh, character. And your reputation is what other people say about you. Your character is who you are in private. And so a lot of my story encompasses times in private when you make decisions, you do things that have a lasting impact in your life. And so, I would hope that they would listen and hopefully pick up on something that will help them to improve their character.
How do you have a reputation that you would like people to know about you, or when the name Mike Flynt comes up in the public sphere, what kind of reaction are you hoping people have?
I think what I hope that people take away from the name is that we all have failures in life. Everyone has a story. You have a story. Everyone has a story, and I'm 77 now, and my story is still not over. But there are so many people out there that are in the process of living their story, of making decisions, and I feel like that they need to understand that nowhere in their story is it written where they quit. That they just don't give up, regardless of how bad things might appear, regardless of how negative things may be going. They need to understand, and it comes about from people like myself and other people out there that have accomplished many things, a lot more grandiose and wonderful than going back to play football as an old man. But um, those things that other people have accomplished, they have to embrace that and realize that quitting is not an option. Now, you can lay it down, whatever it may be that you're frustrated with or you failed at, but pick it back up because quitting is not an option.
I don't know if you've seen this report, but it absolutely blew my mind. And I'm forgetting, I don't know if it was in the New York Times or some related news outlet, but they did a study, I think, of people age 18 to 34. And they did a study on essentially their perseverance, like how likely they are to stick with a certain task. And they compared it to other generations prior to them. And the difference is drastic. The current generation is a lot less likely to stick with a current task or persevere through a current task compared to older generations. And I remember when I was going through school, elementary school, middle school, whatever, my dad always used to tell me, because math was like my thing. And there's those problems in math that you come across, and you're sitting, you're trying for an hour to try and solve this equation, but you just can't get it. I remember him always telling me, just keep going, just keep trying new things, keep,
Yeah,
maybe look at it from a different angle, maybe try a different method, but don't quit, don't give up. Now, if it's been like 5 hours and you're still trying to solve it, maybe, there is a little balance there. Maybe try ask for some, outsider help. But it was eye opening to see just and I don't know if it's social media. I don't know if it's, now with AI and you can just look up answers, but just that difference between the generations and how likely you are to stick with the task. And I'm curious too to see how that kind of manifests itself within business, within sports, and within kind of other areas of life.
yeah, yeah, and it's the generation that uh, they are I guess, socially midgets because they never interact. All their interaction is through technology, and it's such a negative thing. And if you want to see somebody get really in a panic, and I'm talking about a serious panic, you let them get 10 minutes from their home in traffic and realize they left their cell phone. And I mean, they start freaking out because that's their connection to the rest of the world. And it has a negative impact on every thought process that they have going forward until they get that device back. And it's such a negative thing to put on society, and it's not something that they asked for. It's something that was just, again, evolved over a couple of decades. And so that's a generation that I would love to be able to sit down with millions of them and be able to reach them and and tell them that they need to think about their failures. They need to talk about, because everybody wants to talk about success. List your accomplishments. What are your successes? Well, take a look at your failures. Where have you failed and why? What was the reason for that? Not just moving past it and going on and succeeding somewhere else, but trying to dig deep into finding out what it is that caused you to fail. And then start asking yourself, what one thing is it in my life that I would like to redo? What one thing would I like to go back and have a do-over? And not just let the years pile up and bury it, but deal with it. And it causes that sense of reflection that every single day, our greatest asset, the greatest asset we have is our time. And you never hear someone saying, we're walking out of time or we're jogging out of time. What are we doing? We're running out of time. We're always running out of time, and people want to wait. Young people, they want to wait until something is a memory before they start to appreciate it. You've got to live in the now. You've got to appreciate where you are right now, the failures, all of it. And you can't have the distractions of technology and allow that to rob you of time that you're never going to get back. You're just not.
One thing on the technology piece real quick, because I was reminded of it. Speaking of panic and technology and kind of those two words together, I think there's always like those memes where it's like, my anxiety started, in this moment. And for me, it was driving with my dad and having the MapQuest sheet printed out with the directions, and him yelling at me, asking me, where are we going to turn? And me trying, frantically looking through the MapQuest, be like, oh, in 1.4 miles. And obviously now everything is on your phone and you got Apple Maps. And it's impossible to get lost, but that will always stick with me. Those MapQuest years of having to find the exit. And anyways, I
never get around.
Honestly, looking back, I have no idea. Like I truly have. But it's funny because if you ask my dad, he'd be like, "Oh, MapQuest was fantastic. Like before, we just had a map, and it was like, all right, try to find your way."
No, there were a lot of people that were not good at reading maps. They weren't, and so that was a challenge. Yeah. I'm not bad mouthing technology. I'm just saying the abuse of technology for our young people, it's no longer a crutch. It's their whole body armor, and they can't function without it.
Right. I also wanted to bring up one other thing on you discussing the importance of failure and learning from your failures. Kobe Bryant had this fantastic thing that I always go and rewatch this video, but he did an interview with Lewis Howes, and he was talking about how when he's mentoring young basketball players, he'll instruct them to go watch tape of their failures. So whether it be a bad pass, maybe bad shot selection, whatever the case may be. Say, go back and watch those videos and try to learn from them, because you're not going to really learn a whole ton from your success. Like if you hit an amazing 3-pointer or do a crazy windmill dunk, like that's great, but you're not really going to learn from that.
Yeah.
And what he found is like a lot of the kids that he would mentor, like it would pain them to go back and watch their failure. Like they would cringe at themselves and say, how could I think that was the right decision in that scenario, or how stupid was I to do that? But he noticed, he's like, okay, they're starting to learn, and the fact that they're so upset with themselves is actually a good thing, because now if they encounter that scenario again, they're going to say, oh, well, I know, in the past I would make this type of pass, but now I'm going to do this different thing. So that I always go back to that video, because I think, and to your point, it really kind of illustrates the importance of failure, and not only failing, but actually learning from it, and taking the time to grow. I did want to ask you about time, and it's something, most recent guest I had on this podcast, we were talking about, death and kind of the concept of death and that whole thing. And, we were just talking about how like a lot of people don't realize that time is short, and one day you wake up and you're 45, the next day you're 70, and it's like, whoa, like what happened? So what have you learned from your own experience, just the importance, we were just talking about, time, but just the importance of time, and where people kind of go wrong when they think about their life and how much time they have left?
Well, for me, I've always been a huge fan of time travel movies. I loved the movie Somewhere in Time, and then the Back to the Future series. That whole concept of being able to go back in time, but have the memories, the information from the future, and being able to utilize that. Well, when I went back to play, at 59 years old, and I'm back out on that same field that I had been on 37 years before. And I was going through two-a-days, doing all the drills those young guys were doing, 18, 19-year-olds. And there are no mirrors out there for me to see the wrinkles. And, I'm able to compete, and I'm doing all those things. And it was just like going back in time. Had it been a different college, had it been a different field and all that, it would have confused everything, but it was the same. And it was almost identical to what it was when I was kicked out 37 years before. And so I'm out there, but then I'm thinking now, I know now how fast this is going to go by. I'm going to turn around and this season is going to be over. And I didn't waste 1 minute of it. In spite of the pain, in spite of the injuries, a lot of negative things that did happen, I didn't waste any of it. I didn't waste any of it because I knew, by the grace of God, the wisdom that I had learned over the years enabled me to understand how important it was that I rejoice in every minute of this, because it was going to be over. And it did. It ended. And so, for people to realize, and it's one of those virtually impossible things to keep it in the frontal part of your mind, where you're thinking about it constantly, appreciating where you are, what you have. There has to be something that you put there as a reminder. Like for me, it's Helen Keller, and that incredible statement that she made, that I have been blessed with so many things. How can I dwell on those things that I've been denied? I mean, here she's blind, she's mute, she's deaf, and from the age of like 2 for the rest of her life, back in the 1800s. And she's saying, I've been blessed with so many things. And so, who am I to not appreciate what God has done and is doing in my life? And so it's not it's not ignoring the problems that you have. Adversity is a major part of our lives. We're all gonna face adversity. Hey, gravity. Gravity is adversity. Where would we be without gravity? You know? And so you look at all the great athletes, any sport, I don't care what it is, the adversity that they had to overcome to achieve the success that they did, it's mind-boggling. Look at the Navy SEALs. Look at all of those disciplines. You know, the PhDs in the medical field and in science and all the adversity. That's, you know, that's what it's all about, is our life and overcoming adversity. And so you have to welcome that. You have to embrace it. You have to take the position that, hey, I'm going to face adversity. Nick, I boil it down basically to me, because as I said, our reputation is what other people say about us. Our character, that's who we are in private. And so there's a private thing that I do that there's no standard that you measure me by. There's no one else I'm comparing myself to. It's just me. It's private. But what it does is it enables you to train your attitude, just like an athlete trains in sprints or in strength training, boxing, whatever the discipline might be. That training is for a specific purpose with an end goal in mind. The same with your attitude. Our attitude, I call it our superpower. Stanford University says that our attitude is the only area of our lives where we're in 100% control. That's a superpower. When you can say that I'm in 100% control of my attitude, what that means is that circumstances come against you. How you receive that and process it is in your control. Once you realize that, once you know that you don't have to have a canned response or what everybody else is doing out there. But you train your attitude, just like you don't start out running a marathon the first day. You build up to that. Well, how do you build up to your attitude and to where you're able to overcome the things that come against you, the adversity that you're going to be faced with? And it's a simple question that you ask yourself maybe 1,000 times a day. Am I going to be good or am I going to be great? It's that simple. Now, in between those two words, you write in red adversity, because when you choose to be good, when you say, okay, I'm going to be good, then welcome to 99% of society, of the world. You're going to blend. You're going to blend in. There's going to be very little resistance. No one's going to know who you are. You're going to go through your life. All that's going to be okay. And if that's what you want, that's great. But when you say, I'm going to be great, adversity, there is adversity in that decision. And it could be, I'm going to be a great brother. I'm going to be a great husband, a great father, a great wife. I'm going to be a great teammate. It could be any of those things. But whenever you make the decision that you're going to be great, and no one knows but you, adversity is going to be standing there that you're going to have to overcome. There's going to be some adversity you're going to have to overcome to be great. But here's the key in this. There's a cumulative effect. The more choices you make to be good throughout the course of your day in your private life, the easier it's going to become to just make that good choice. The same way, when you choose to be great, when you choose to be great and take on that adversity, you begin to realize that, hey, you can do this. You can be great at this. You can be great at that. You can continue. And you have that cumulative effect that has an impact on your character. And your character, again, is who you are in private. It's when no one else is around. And then there are things in life that reveal your character. But you have an opportunity to do something about it.
One of the things that kept repeating in my head as you were talking was the fact how your attitude and choosing to be great is an intentional decision, and it is a conscious decision. It's not just something that happens that one day you wake up and you're like, you know, today feels like a good day to be great. It's months, it's years of thinking about it, of being intentional. And I think I'm curious to hear your perspective on this. I think where a lot of people trip up is they're not intentional about it. I can say that I want to be a great interviewer all I want, but unless I'm intentional and unless I go and seek out information or advice from other people who I deem to be great interviewers, or study some of the best interviewers out there, and then actually put that in practice and be intentional about the things that I say, I will never become a great interviewer. I mean, I could sit here and dream about it all day long. It just won't happen. I can guarantee you that. Same with you. Like if you just thought, well, you know, I'd love to go back and play football at the age of 59. If you just sat there and thought about it and dreamt about it, it wouldn't happen. But it took years and years of practice and getting your body in the right frame, you know, right state. And so I feel like intentionality is where a lot of people get tripped up.
Yeah, and you know, people, you know, in athletics, and people are most familiar with football. I say people, Americans are most
Hmm.
familiar with the term momentum in the game of football. Momentum is real. I mean, it's very real. Momentum in life is very real. And when you start making those minor choices to be great, and with guys, not so much with girls, I'm telling you, but with guys, your pride is going to be one of those challenges that prevents you from being great. That you just decide, if you're in traffic and all of a sudden something happens and somebody's giving you that one finger wave out the window, and then all of a sudden now you've got to make that choice. Am I going to be good or am I going to be great? You know, how am I going to receive this? Because there is momentum associated when you choose to be great and overcome that adversity and go on with your life. Then all of a sudden you've started momentum so that the next time a decision is made, or good or great, that you've got that momentum. You've got that, and you'll feel it. You'll know it. And again, all of this is about building character, and it's something that you do in private. You know, for years I've had, because of my background in fitness, I've had a saying about nutritional programs or fitness programs, that the greatest program in the world, bar none, is the one you'll do. Because if you won't do it, I don't care how much science you've got. I don't care how much engineering you've got, how many testimonials you have. If it's not something you're going to do, then it doesn't matter. You have to look at being good versus great and ask yourself, you know, how difficult can this be? Is this something I'm going to do? Of course, it's something that you can do. And when you know that 90% of people that set goals never reach those goals, they give up along the way somewhere. And you know all this information, and then you're internalizing this because this is personal. This is not a group thing. This is you as an individual being good or great. And that cumulative effect, the momentum that you have, is going to help you reach those goals and dreams that you have in life.
That advice, the best fitness program that you should do is the one that you'll actually do, is can be applied to anything.
And
And
yeah,
I think about it like in terms of business. The best business that you can start is the one that you will do and stick
yeah,
with.
yeah,
People come to me and say, "Oh, you know, should I start a podcast? Should I?" I'm like, are you naturally curious? Like, do you have a curiosity? Like, do you look at the world or look at people and are like, oh, I'm curious what their story or what, you know, their answers might be to certain questions? Do you enjoy talking to people? Above everything else, do you see yourself doing it for a long time? Because I guarantee you, unless you're already an A-list celebrity, if you put out 5 episodes of a podcast, you will not be Joe Rogan. I can assure you of that. So if you're thinking about starting something, whether it's a business, fitness program, whatever the case may be, do you see yourself do? I love that. I'm gonna start walking around just repeating that to everyone I see.
Well, and something else too. And these are things that, I like to give people something that they can hang their hat on, basically something that they can live with, it'll stick with them. And so I have another saying, you can apply it to any area of your life, but I apply it to fitness. A chain is only as strong as what? Its weakest link. And so whenever you're making that decision, okay, is this something I'm going to do? Okay, where is the weak link? Where in this is failure possibly going to show up? Because I'm going to eliminate that going in. I'm going to look at this. Where is my weak link in my chain to success in this? Identify that going in. Get that out of the way. Move it out, and then go forward doing something that that you know that you will do.
So what would be an example of that? It could be fitness, it could be business, anything that comes to mind.
Okay, and say in fitness, let's say that you're going to start a pull-up program with fitness, and you're going to go through a full range of motion, but you've got issues with your forearms. Your grip and hanging onto that bar is your weak link. And so you want to develop your back. You want to do the things that you feel like you need to do these pull-ups. So what you do is you get hand straps that you put around your wrist, you wrap around the bar, and so now your grip is no longer an issue. You're able to hang by those. So what you've done, you've eliminated that weak link that enables you to do those pull-ups in a manner for the full range of motion that develops your back the way you want to develop it. But otherwise, if you just said, okay, I can't do this because my forearms are too weak, my grip's not strong enough, and so I'm going to have to try to find another way. No, you go ahead and go with that best option, but you eliminate that weak link. And it's the same way in so many other lifts in fitness. But it's whether it's your sport, whether it's baseball, soccer, you find what it is. And so many people have a tendency to identify an area that is a weak link for them. They want to spend all their time trying to improve that. No, eliminate that. You focus on your strengths. So you focus on what you're good at and enable yourself to do that, and watch everything else start to fall in place.
I was looking off to the side because I was trying to find this interview that I watched recently with, I was trying to find his name, but his name is Hayes Bernard. He is this, multi-million, I think even billion-dollar founder. And he was talking about, people always say like, the kids who got C's in school are the ones who end up building the great business or end up succeeding more often in life than maybe the ones who get A's. And so he was trying to like give some context to that and say, well, why is that? Why does that happen? And he was like, my theory is that the kids who get C's understand their weaknesses. They understand that they're bad at math. They understand that they're bad maybe at a specific subject, and that carries them through their entire life. So when they get to building a business, they understand where they maybe come up short. Maybe you're not great at recruiting. Maybe you're not great at marketing. And so they'll go out and find people who are great in those areas, add them to the business, and now you have this huge thing where, and again, this is generalized, right? There's obviously outliers. But maybe the kids who are succeeding at a high level in school, they don't realize their own weaknesses. They don't see maybe where they're coming up short. So he was like, he was saying that was my experience. Like I was dyslexic in school. I realized I couldn't really read that well. So when it came to forming my business, I was like, all right, let me find some people who are great at this one area that I can plug in and ultimately lead to success. So it's interesting you bring up the idea of finding the weak link, and like you said, it applies to so many different areas of your life.
Yeah
It's profound. Mike, I want to get to your story, and I figured I'd start with this question. What do I need to know? What does the audience need to know about your upbringing that gives us a little more context into who the guy they're listening to is today?
Okay. Well, the thing about my upbringing and who I am today, there's basically two lives there, and the um, uh, the young man that was raised in West Texas and Odessa, Texas, by a World War II veteran that was part of the D-Day invasion and the Battle of the Bulge. That military mindset that my dad used in training me when I was young, um, and the young man that came out of that training and went into life is very different than the guy that went back to play football in 2007. Um, I was handed a pair of boxing gloves when I was 6, and we started that day boxing, and that went on for 7 years on a weekly basis, sometimes, multiple times during the week. And my dad was a beer drinker, and, sometimes he hit a little too hard. But, he told me I was tough enough, I could take it, and I could. And so I was a good person. I was not a troublemaker, but I became a trouble seeker because I didn't mind fighting. And in West Texas, you have to understand the Roughnecks in the oil field, the Cowboys, and then football. And so if you don't mind fighting, there's going to be lots of opportunities. And for me, it was I wasn't a troublemaker, but I became a trouble seeker. If I saw someone that I felt like needed my help, was being bullied, I'd jump in a heartbeat. I carried that mindset. My senior year in high school, we won state championship for the first time. That inspired the book and the subsequent movie Friday Night Lights at Permian High School. And I was, pardon me, I was a very good football player when I was young, and received multiple full football scholarship offers. And I ended up down at a college called Sul-Ross State University. Sul is short for Sullivan. Sullivan Ross was a former governor of the state of Texas. And my sophomore year, I had over 100 tackles in the Lone Star Conference. And my junior year, I had over 100 tackles again. I had 24 tackles in one game. I was team captain. I was an all-conference linebacker. But in spite of the stellar reputation I had with my teammates, the administration did not share that opinion of me. I had 10 off-the-field fistfights over that 2-year time period that had me on their radar. So I come back from my senior year in 1971. We're picked to win the conference. We went 8-3 the year before. We have everybody back, and I was team captain. I was checking rooms to make sure everyone was in at curfew. A couple of guys weren't in. One of them took exception to me telling him when he could and couldn't come and go. It got physical, and he got hurt. The difference in this situation was the president of the college was called. The head coach had me in his office the next morning, bright and early. The coaches were in my room packing my things, and he told me that he was going to have to ask me not to be part of the team, and he had no choice. The president of the college had called him. He said, "It's you or Mike Flynt. Who's it going to be?" So I had to call my dad to meet us on the highway. The coaches were going to take me halfway to Odessa. My dad started, what's happening? What are you doing? And I said, "Dad, I got in a fight." And he started chewing me out over the phone, and I just interrupted him. And I said, "Daddy, look, I am exactly what you made me." And he never said anything else to me about it after that. So, that was the young man that got kicked out all those years ago. I was not an angry person. People have asked me, why were you so angry? I wasn't angry. Um, I was really good at what I did, and I took it too far. I made I made a lot of poor decisions, as we many times do when we're young. And then, I went into the fitness business, became a strength and conditioning coach at University of Nebraska, University of Oregon, Texas A&M, and developed fitness equipment, received a patent on some of my equipment, just basically went into the fitness business. And along the way, I met a beautiful young co-ed when I was living in Austin, Texas, and we fell in love, and she changed my whole life. She introduced me to Jesus Christ, and so after I got out of the fitness business, I um, you know stayed in shape. I never stopped. I've always told people that not every journey has to have a destination. You just have to move forward. Sometimes you got to wait, and that destination will show up. And in my case, that's what happened. I was 59, found out through happenstance that I still had a semester of eligibility left at that college that I'd been kicked out of, and I walked on. The coach gave me a shot, and I tell people, when you're 59 and coach says, "Yeah, I'll give you a chance to go through 2 days and make the team." If you're not ready, you're not going to get ready to play college football. But I'd always had this saying about myself that I'm always about 30 days away from being in really good shape. I never stopped running sprints. I never stopped lifting heavy. And so when coach said, "Okay, you be here, I'm going to give you a chance," I was ready.
As you look back, I have so many questions, but as you look back on some of the trouble seeking that you did
Yeah.
earlier on in your life, do you look back on that with any sort of regret?
I do not, simply because it was adversity that my dad put in my life at a very young age. And see, I had this drive to be pleasing to my dad. And everything I did, everywhere I went, I was always looking for a way to improve myself physically. And then my dad would play. I called it mind games. He just always called it being ready. And it was that military training that he had. But we would sit sometimes for hours, and he would create scenarios, imaginary scenarios, that I would be in that. And in my mind, I would be in his scenario, and he would be asking me what I would do. What are you going to do when this guy does this? What are you going to do when they pick up a chair or a bottle or a pool cue? And then how do you handle more than one guy at a time? What are you going to do in that scenario? This is where you sit. You never sit on the inside of a booth. You sit on the outside where you can get on your feet if you need to. I mean, it was grooming, it was training mentally. And so I was able to take that training that I received um, throughout my youth and apply it to so many areas in my life that were positive and productive because of the adversity that my dad put in my life. Fitness became my livelihood. It was who I was, to stay in shape constantly, because I was always trying to work to please my dad, to be, what I felt like he wanted me to be. And so I absolutely do not regret, the abuse and all that he put me through in those boxing matches and things. I was able to handle it. He said I could, and I could. Would I do that to my son? I made myself a promise the day he was born that I was never going to do to him the things that my dad did to me. And so but I don't look back on that and regret him having done that, because God used that. He used every bit of that in fashioning who I am today, and the way that I look at adversity today, and the things when that adversity comes up, um, I have this fallback position. Hey, I've been through stuff like this before. Bring it on. And so I don't no, I don't regret any of it.
Did you ever get a chance to speak to your dad and ask him why he was so seemingly obsessed with putting you through that much adversity, especially early on? I mean, my dad, he would teach me how to fight and stuff. I feel like it somewhat normal for maybe a boy, kind
Yeah.
of a father-son relationship. It's like, hey, if someone comes up to you, put up your hands like this, do some basics, but certainly not to the level that your father kind of put you through. Did you ever figure out why, like what his motivation was behind it?
Oh, I knew. I knew what it was. He he just he wanted me to be tougher than he ever was. He was one of four brothers. He wanted me to be tougher than his brothers. He wanted me to be a tough guy. In my heart, I was more like my mom than my dad. And, and I've always said my mom's my hero. She was, a war bride. My dad married her after he was wounded in the Battle of the Bulge. He was sent back to England for rehab. And he and my mom had reconnected before D-Day. They met. And then during his rehab, they fell in love and got married. And um, she shipped over after the war here to the United States. But that's a whole different story in all that she went through in her life. And the more I found out about it, the more I admired her and wanted to be like her. And so my dad was someone that I was driven to try to please him. My mom always accepted me exactly how I was. And so I had this balance between the two that, everyone wants their dad. Everyone wants their dad's approval. There's one thing about my movie that a guy said years ago. He told me, he said, your story is going to be made into a movie. He said, because it's about daddy issues and everybody has them. And so, I don't know that there was anything that my dad could have said to me that I would have believed about why he did the things that he did and that he was sorry. Um, that just, that wasn't in him.
When did you stop um, having that urge to please your dad, or I guess to just do certain things to gain his approval? And the reason I ask, and I've certainly felt this in my life, is when I look back, sometimes I ask myself, why did I make that decision in that time frame? And a lot of times it's like, oh, because I wanted to please someone, or I wanted, my parents to be happy, or I wanted, kind of their dreams to be fulfilled or at least their expectations of what, I was supposed to be. So to your point, I think a lot of people go through it. I mean, I've certainly gone through it. When did you stop, and how did you get over that obstacle?
You know, I'm 77 now, and I don't think I have completely stopped. Um, there's this innate desire, I believe in all of us, women, men, to be pleasing to our dads, and to hear him say, "I'm proud of you," and uh, and that was something that I seldom ever heard from my dad. Would love to have heard it so many times, but as I grew in my faith and totally changed, reading my Bible every single day, realizing that this was who I wanted to be like. I wanted to be more like Christ, not more like my dad. And so because of the training you go through, when you're young, there's so many things that stick with you, memories that you have that you're continually fighting against, reactions that are the normal course of how you were trained for so long. But just continually, consistently um, studying God's word, and for me, it's been many, many, many years ago, over 40 years ago. Eileen showed me a verse in the Bible that Jesus said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and then all these other things that you're after will be added unto you." And so, what that meant for me was retraining myself, both mentally and in my heart, was every single morning before I started doing anything else, I spent time in God's Word. That one thing changed me more than anything else that I've done throughout my life.
I had a question prepared here for you about how you were able to go from, uh, someone who was in great shape, but being in football shape, there's a difference there.
Yeah,
From talking to you, it seemed, and to what you said earlier, you're 30 days away from being in really great shape. So it, at least my understanding of it is that you were always close to being in that football shape, and now you had a reason when you went back to actually get to that point. And I was reminded, Steve Jobs had a fantastic commencement speech at Stanford, I believe. This is back in maybe '07. And he was saying how when he was younger, he took this calligraphy course. And at the time, he didn't really understand it, didn't really see a whole lot of purpose, but he was kind of interested in it. He was like, all right, let me take this. And he said how that calligraphy course taught him the importance of beautiful fonts and beautiful writing and design, and ultimately he was able to use a lot of those teachings in designing Apple and making it this beautiful design that we all have come to know and love. And he said how he was able to connect the dots looking back, and how he did so many things in his life that led to him being able to create Apple. Um, when you look back at your life, is that how you view some of the things that you're doing? The fact that your dad put all this adversity through you and it led you to this life of fitness, and you were in this great shape this entire time, and so when this opportunity came about to go back and play college football at the age of 59, you're already close to being in football shape, and that ultimately helped you make the team. Like, is that how do you connect the dots looking back?
yeah, I really do. You can. It's easy to do that, and again, from the way that my dad, the training that he put into my life, you can't intimidate me. I mean, that doesn't mean that you might not be able to beat me at something, but that's what you'll have to do. You're not going to intimidate me. I learned a long, long time ago that you know don't let that in your head, and so I haven't, and the so many other things that I learned from my dad that I the mind games and the positive aspect that could play in overcoming adversity in my life, and speaking out loud, and the how important our words are that we say, and that over the years you hear people, the nursery rhyme that they unfortunately teach in churches all over the country is, "Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me." Well, that's a lie straight out of hell. Words are extremely powerful and damaging, are uplifting and promotional. And so, but our brains, the most important words that our brains hear are our own words. Whenever you speak something positive, whenever you say something positive, it has more impact on you than anything anyone else says in that same vein, the same words. And so, you know, learning to harness all of that, and the the positive things that, in God's word. And there's so many places and so many people, Christians, that don't understand the power that they have in the word of God, and being able to, I'm not on here to preach a sermon or anything, but I'm just saying, like in First Samuel, God says that he let none of Samuel's words fall to the ground. Well, what did that mean? Well, God was giving Samuel the words that he needed to say, and that's why they were accomplishing what it was that he was sending them out for. Well, God's done the same thing for us. He's given us the Bible. Those are his words. And so when we take those words and use them in a positive way, in a way that's pleasing to him, it produces fruit in our lives and the lives of those that hear them. And so, again, most of this stuff that I'm talking to you about is individually related. It's something that a person can do in the privacy of their car or their office or on a walk. And that's where the rubber hits the road. As I said earlier, your character is who you are in private. And so when you get to a point where you truly love yourself because of who you're trying to become or become like, then all these other things just start being attracted to you. Happiness and people wanting to be around someone like you, that you don't let things overwhelm you, and you're always uplifting them and finding positive things to say about them, and not getting on that bandwagon about something negative, but just circumventing that. And in our political world today, everyone's looking for, for someone that just wants to be a companion, a friend, an uplifting personality that can speak something positive into their lives.
I heard this quote one time. I can't remember from who, but they said, to be interesting, be interested. And that changed my perspective and kind of how I went about friendships, relationships, and everything in between. To be interesting, be interested. So take some time, like actually care about maybe a problem that your friend's going through. Like actually sit down and listen to them, and if they're asking for advice, try to give your best advice, and actually be interested in on a deeper level. Because I think also, like, a lot of the relationships that we have nowadays, especially with social media, is just very surface level, and it's everyone's posting their best moments on Instagram, and but maybe deep down they're going through something, and they're maybe not putting on social media for everyone to see, but it's, and all it takes too, it could be a 5-minute conversation. Like, I always used to laugh. I've had friends in the past, I'll call them, whatever, and maybe I haven't heard from them in like a year. And I'd always laugh when I'd give them a call and they'd pick up and they'd be like, "Hey man, how's it going?" I'm like, "Good." And they'd be like, "So sorry I haven't called you in the last year. I've been so busy." And I'm like, "You're telling me in the last 365 days you didn't have 5 minutes to to send a text or just be like, 'Hey, how you doing?'" So I don't know, like it's always finding, like, how do we go beyond just the surface level stuff, and how do we connect with people on a deeper level that I've been trying to do a better job of.
Yeah. Well, Nick, it's like, when we started this conversation, a question that you can ask so many people, particularly people that you don't know well, that it really gives people a platform to start explaining a little bit about their lives and what they've done or want to do. And it's that simple question, what's your story? Hey, what's your story? And then just stop. Let them process that, because immediately they're starting to accumulate thoughts, the sequence of events, and where they are in life right now, where they want to go. And all of that is happening because of that simple question that you ask them that no one else has asked them that. And so they open up and start talking about things that they may never have spoken with anyone about. And it's such a simple question, what's your story?
I'm gonna start using that. I will certainly with this podcast, even with my friends, because it's interesting. Because as you were talking, I was thinking like, okay, so what is my story? Like, if somebody were to come and ask me, like, "Hey, Nick, what's your story?" And it's interesting how, I don't know if this is a good or bad thing, but my mind immediately went to like almost like my resume. Like, what are my accomplishments?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's like the first thing. Is like, oh well, I graduated from blah 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 and got a degree in blah blah blah, and um,
Yeah. Those are
so
accomplishments. Yeah. What is your story? Who
right,
who are you? And what's your story? How did Nick get to where he is right now? What's going on? And
yeah,
so yeah, it's something because people love to have other people care about them and enable them to talk about themselves and speak about their lives for a few minutes. So,
yeah. No, absolutely. Mike, I want to be respectful of your time, so I got a couple more questions and we'll let you go.
okay.
I am curious. We've kind of we've alluded to it. Obviously, a big part of your story is the actual game, the actual game that happened when you were 59. So if you could just lead us through like maybe night before or morning of, like how are you feeling, like what type of emotions are you carrying, and just your perspective on what actually happened during that game.
Well, you know, spoiler alert, the game that is shown in the movie is not what actually happened. And but the game that actually happened, my first game back on the field, um, we won the game in triple overtime, 45-42, and they couldn't show all that in the movie. They wouldn't have time to do that, to go through all that. So what they did is they um, pared that down into the actual event that your listeners will see in the movie September 19th when that comes out. But I was on the field when we won that game, 45-42, and it was it was absolutely incredible. The night before, um, the you know the butterflies, all of that you get when you're young, all of that happened. Yeah, it was something, but it was a bigger event for me than anything in my life from an athletic standpoint because there were so many people there to see me play. Um, yeah, my dad had died, but my mom was there. My oldest grandson and his mom and dad were there. My sisters, all my extended family. I mean, they were all there, and so you know there was all that going on. Plus, the baby boomers that came back to watch me play in huge numbers. Uh, they maxed out the stadium. It was quite the event, and as God would have it, triple overtime, and we win. And so it was it was one of those surreal moments that you have a snapshot in your mind that will never ever go away, and you just hang on to it and smile every time it flashes up.
What were you feeling after the game's done? Like, are you happy? Are you relieved? Are you sad that it's over?
Well, no, I was ecstatic for my teammates. I was excited, and I knew, as I said earlier, I knew I was gonna turn around and it was gonna be over. It was gonna end. And what I didn't want to be guilty of, which I was not, was waiting until it was over to look at the memory and appreciating the memory. I wanted to appreciate it while it was happening, and I did that. And I did that by allowing all these other people into my life, that it was exciting for them and rejoicing with them and what God had allowed me to do. And that they appreciated it so much. And so it just, it was a ripple effect that, went out to everyone that was there, that everybody was, I think, as excited as I was. And so it was, it was really hard to describe. It was just pretty amazing.
How did your how did your wife react when you first told her, "Hey, I think I'm gonna go back and play in a college football game"?
Yeah, that was crazy because see, I had never shared with her the depth of regret I had in losing that senior year. I'd never told anyone about it. I internalized it, and and so you know, our youngest daughter had just left for college, and so we're going to be empty nesters. Our two oldest children have married and left home, and um, so we're going to downsize, and we put a house on the market and received a contract almost immediately. And we got 30 days. We've got to be out. So Eileen's ignoring me. She's getting ready for a freshman orientation at the University of Tennessee, and then she's got a list of houses that she's going to look at, and she's thinking, well, the NCAA is going to tell him there's no way he has eligibility, or he's going to get in there and that coach is going to laugh him out of his office. But I come back and she's got a list of houses for us to go look at. And I said, Eileen, I mean, we're going back to college. I'm going down to Texas. I'm going to play football. And she got so upset. She said, I cannot believe at 59 years old that you want to go back and try to play college football. She said, I feel like I'm married to Peter Pan. And then it hit me that I had never shared with her the depth of the regret that had been in my life. And I told her, I said, I've lived over half my life with a regret over a mistake that I made. And now coach is going to give me an opportunity to rewrite that last chapter in my athletic career. And I may not make the team. I may not be able to make the team. I don't know that, but I've got to go try. For me to have a chance to go and try and not take it, for me, that'd be worse than getting kicked out the first time. And then to live the rest of my life asking myself, what if? What if I could have made that team? I said, I've got to go try. And so she said, well, if the shoe were on the other foot, I know you'd do it for me. So let's go play football. And so she embraced it, like everything else in our marriage. She's been the glue that's held everything together.
What do you hope your story teaches others about regret?
Well, I think that it's so important to talk about it. We always talk about the greatest successes we've had, and I mentioned this earlier. You've got to look at those failures and get them out on the table. And for me, I didn't share it when that was a negative thing, really, because I internalized it. But the point that I arrived at when I found out that I had eligibility, the first thought that came to my mind was, I know there's nothing I can do about those guys I let down. That's over. That's in the past. But if I could do something today, I can't change the past, but if I can change the meaning of the past, if I can help a bunch of young men today and exchange that for what I did all those years ago, for me, that's something I need to do. And so I tell people, you can't change the past, but change the meaning of the past. Do something now, today, and substitute it for the wrong that you did in the name of whatever it is that you did. And it's amazing the peace that comes through that.
This may seem off topic, but I'll try to connect it back here. My most recent guest on this podcast is a guy by the name of Derek Sivers. And Derek started this company called CD Baby back in the early 2000s, sold it for 22 million, now lives off in Wellington, New Zealand, living his best life, honestly. He most recently wrote a book that I'm going to start just recommending to everyone. It really changed my perspective. It's called Useful, Not True. I'll put a link in the description. You can buy it off his website. It's $15. You can download the PDF or get a hard copy. But the whole premise of the book is like, there are things that we say and certainly thoughts that we have that are useful but not true. So like a stupid example, for example, is like a porcupine, right? Like the thought that a porcupine could shoot its needles at you or whatever, that is obviously false. Like it cannot do that, but it's useful because it teaches you to stay away from the porcupine.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so there's certain ideas and thoughts that, yeah, they're not true, but they're useful. One of them, at least my takeaway, is like delusional self-belief. And I've had athletes on the podcast who have come on and they've said, like, I just believe in myself so much. It's delusional how much confidence I have in myself and my own abilities. Like I just had Kyle Sloter come on the podcast. He was a backup quarterback for the Vikings. And he said, Nick, right now, if you were to ask me, team's down by 3, there's 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, who are you choosing? Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, or me? I will choose me 10 out of 10 times. And now people are going to hear that and they'll say, well, obviously I'm choosing Brady or Mahomes. But he was like, that's how much self-belief I have. Now, that I classify as something that is useful, although probably not true, right? Like if you were
Yeah.
given the option, you would take Brady or Mahomes. So like, I've just had, like, now I look at everything in life, whether, and we've talked about regret, we've talked about self-belief, we've talked about like how to become successful. And there's so many thoughts that you can choose on a given basis. Why not choose the ones that are going to serve you and that are going to push you towards something, something of value or push you in the right direction. We
Yeah.
talked about, choosing a good attitude. Even if you have to maybe, use propaganda on yourself, lie to yourself.
Yeah.
But if it's leading you in the direction of a good attitude, then that is a useful outcome. So I was just reminded of that as as we're kind of wrapping up and you're talking about your story and, just minimizing regrets and wanting to go back and change the past. Like those are all useful things that ultimately led to this great outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. And something else that's really important whenever your listeners or yourself, whenever you look at that program and say, okay, this is something I will do. Okay, this is my weak link. I'm eliminating this. Now in my life, the choices that I'm making, that I'm gonna be great. Okay. That there's one other thing that I want everyone to take away from this, and it's consistency. It's if you want to find out your reality today and why you are where you are in any area of your life, you just take a sheet of paper, draw a line, and put a minus on the left side and a plus on the right side, and you go down and list everything that you do every day consistently in a positive category or a negative category. And then there's your answer. Because it's not what you do every once in a while that has the greatest impact on your life. It's what you do consistently. And so when you hear all of these great thoughts and, do you apply them consistently in your life? Because if the consistency is not there, then it's always going to be hit and miss. You're going to finally get to a point where you forget to apply it and then you move on. You have to have consistency in your life.
Why do you think so many people, real quick, are so bad at the consistency piece of it? And what would your advice be to people on how to avoid some of those pitfalls when it comes to being inconsistent?
There's again, adversity and not, it's like the famous I say famous, the Navy SEAL that's Admiral of the Navy that made the commencement speech at the University of Texas, 10, 12 years ago. Make your bed. That was his opening comment. You make your bed. What's that got to do with anything? Again, it's a positive step. It's one of those momentum creating events. And it's the same way with consistency. It's the same way with choosing to be great. You start small. It's adversity. Everything the question that you just asked is adversity coming against someone that they have to overcome. They've got to be able, they need to recognize the role that adversity plays in every area of their lives. And are they going to overcome that adversity? Well, yeah, I am. I'm going to be consistent. Okay, what's required of me to be consistent? Well, I've got to be more disciplined. I've got, the way to discipline is ounces. The way to regret is tons. So I've got to be more disciplined. And to do that, I've got to be committed. If I'm not committed, then I can't be consistent. And so there's all these things that play into it, but it boils down to adversity. Adversity is what stands in the way of every single one of those self-help development descriptive names that I've just, laid out. It's all about adversity. And when you recognize that, when you know who the enemy is, then you deal with it. You start overcoming adversity. You choose to be great.
Well, a perfect way to end this podcast. I feel like if there's one takeaway that I've certainly had is just the power of adversity. And, we've mentioned it a bunch of times. We just talked about it, but the power of adversity and the things that it could teach you. And if you learn to harness it in the proper manner, how powerful it could be for your life and for your outcomes. Mike, I can't thank you enough for your time today. This has been such an awesome conversation. Just hearing your story, hearing your perspective. I'm a huge fan, and I can't wait to see the movie and see how it goes. I'll definitely be there in theaters to see it. But before we go, please plug anything that you have coming up where people can find you. MikeFlynt.com is my website, and we're reworking that. That's our next meeting today. But anyway, they can watch the trailer for the movie there. And but I'm not a social media guy, so that I'm told that's all going to change. But we'll see. But go see The Senior, September 19th, in theaters everywhere. The Senior, September 19th. By the way, I have to ask, I know LeBron wrote something in your book, because you also have the book, The Senior. Right. What was that like? I have to ask because I'm a huge LeBron fan. Yeah. Oh, well, LeBron, amazing individual. It was 17 years ago when he endorsed my book. Just a wonderful individual, thought my story was incredible. And Maverick Carter was one of his, lifelong friends that I had developed a relationship with. Went out to Cleveland a couple of times, met LeBron, and so they ended up. LeBron wrote the foreword for my book, and we've lost touch over the last 12, 14 years, simply because of his, amazing life that he's living and all the things that he's doing, and I've moved on with mine. But it's still it was such an honor to have him endorse my book. Yeah, that's awesome. And here's to hoping that LeBron plays 20 more years. And who knows, maybe LeBron will also come back to basketball at the age of 59. We'll see. If anybody could do it, he could. I'm telling you, what a specimen. Yeah, honestly. Mike, thanks again for your time today. This has been awesome. Wishing you all the best, and certainly we'll go watch the movie September 19th. Okay, Nick, thank you so much for having me. All the best for you. God bless.